Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. The term Sakai has resurfaced in public debate after being used to insult a senior Orang Asli politician. Now, rights groups have condemned the comment as hate speech and demanded that the term be abolished. But an Orang Asli Student Association is pushing back against this, warning that erasing the word from official use and local vernacular could threaten legal protections tied to indigenous land rights and identity. So instead, they're campaigning to reclaim the term through the hashtag Proud Sakai campaign. Now, the question we're asking tonight is, can a slur be reclaimed as a symbol of pride, or should it be erased from our vocabulary altogether? Joining me on the show today to discuss this further is Dr Kamal Solhaimi Fadzil, who is head of the Department of Anthropology and Sociology at University Malaya. He's also the head of UM's Centre for Pribumi Studies, for Malaysia Pribumi Studies. Kamal, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Let's delve deeper into understanding this, the use of the term Sakai. It sparked a lot of debate over its interpretation and perceived derogatory meaning. So how could you maybe walk us through a little bit about the historical context of this term and how it's understood today?
Okay. Hi, Melissa. Thank you for inviting me on your show today. Although this is quite a difficult topic to speak on, I think historically, or how we kind of understand the historical use of the term Sakai, is that it exists in colonial records, and definitely in reference to some of the Orang Asli groups in the peninsula. Apparently, it is also used in Sarawak among some of the indigenous groups there, and also in the region. But I think the focus should be on the peninsula. And in the peninsula, among the Orang Asli, the colonial reference to it was mostly for the Semai, Essanoi, and the Proto-Malay groups, if I'm not mistaken. I stand corrected on that. And so, yes, you do find the words in colonial records. However, with the introduction of the Aboriginal Peoples Act in 1955, again, I stand corrected. I don't memorize these things. The term Sakai was dropped and replaced with the more official term Orang Asli, as we know it today, or Aboriginal, as the Act is referred to, the Aboriginal Peoples Act 134. Yes, and the shift was because there was a general recognition that the term is derogatory. It is not a positive term for many from the various communities, Orang Asli communities. I think it is also important to recognize that Orang Asli is not a homogeneous group, rather that it is heterogeneous, and they do have different historical experiences with the term, and therefore have different levels of sensitivity to the use of the term.
Okay, just so that I understand better, Sakai is not a tribe, or do any indigenous tribes or indigenous peoples refer to themselves as Sakai?
No, it's not a tribe. The Jakwa or the Jabatan Orang Asli recognizes 18 subtribes. So there are three groups. There's the Senoi, the Proto-Malay, and the Negrito. And under each of them, there are about 6 groups, depending on how they want to use it. There's a 7th in the Senoi group, the Temok, that makes the total sub-ethnic group 19. But generally, they'll say it's between 18 to 19, depending on how you refer to it. But no, Sakai is not any of the main ethnic categories, nor is it any of the sub-ethnic categories.
Okay.
It is an umbrella term that was used to refer to Orang Asli during colonial times.
Okay. So what do you make then, Kamal, about the calls by certain rights groups and individuals to abolish completely the use of the term Sakai, abolish it altogether? Do you consider it, using this term, hate speech? Would you go that far?
I think the reference that it was, the incident that sparked the conversation, I think that could be may be interpreted as hate speech. At best, if you want to be kind to the person, maybe just ignorance. And it reflects a deeper underlying racism that we share as a community, and how we look at the Orang Asli. We would not use derogatory terms commonly, publicly, in reference to other ethnic communities in Malaysia, rightfully so, because we recognize it's sensitive and we recognize that it is rude. So we wouldn't use it against another group. Self-referencing is a different story. We seem to do that quite a bit in our society, in many societies, but that's a different thing. There's a different dynamics going on there. But to call somebody else from another ethnic group using a derogatory term that is derogatory to them, we would understand that that is rude and unacceptable and racist. And yet, somehow, we have not quite seen it in the same light with Orang Asli. And I think this is an opportunity for us to reflect into ourselves, to look deeper into ourselves, to challenge how we've come to understand Orang Asli as a group of people, and whether or not colonial racism, that frame, that whole way of interpreting Orang Asli, carries on today in how we think and talk about them.
Right. This is interesting because there are some younger Orang Asli, particularly Persatuan Mahasiswa Orang Asli, who are saying they want to reclaim that word, that this hashtag Proud Sakai campaign is reclaiming a derogatory term, shifting its social meaning. And also they highlight the fact that this is a term that's been used, as you mentioned, in colonial records that could have legal status, or might have some implications on policy documents. Well, what do you make of that? Do you think that removing this, not just from vernacular, but also from official use, would actually weaken Orang Asli land claims, or even identity, their rights to self-determination of identity? What do you think?
I think the quick answer would be no. Because if I'm not mistaken, I'm not a lawyer, I don't have a legal background, but if I'm not mistaken, the Aboriginal Peoples Act acknowledges, allows us to acknowledge the shift in the use of terminology. And so you don't have to use the word Sakai to recognize that Orang Asli today, when looking at historical documents such as colonial records, refer to the same group. I don't think we need to use it in a sense in official terminology, in contemporary official use, because it is recognized that another word has replaced it. That's the first one. So I don't see a threat in that sense. Number two, we don't use it officially. It's not a word used officially. Usually I understand where they're coming from, and I respect that every individual has a right, to have a voice and to speak their mind. And it is a word that's used by they are part of the community. So the struggle is really internal, not a struggle that I'm part of, right? So for me, I'm really speaking as an outsider. I can understand where they're coming from. I can also understand why a lot of people would be angry with the use of the term. But it is not, I don't see it commonly used in everyday discourse, in official discourse. It might have come up once or twice in certain official, speech or whatever, if there is any out there. And I would think those would be anomalies rather than the norm. Right. In normal sense, we use the term Orang Asli today. We hardly ever use Aboriginal peoples as well to refer to Orang Asli. Right. And Orang Asli is used because it is deemed a more neutral term, a more positive term. So officially we're not using it. In the vernacular, in the everyday use of the word, when we use it, it is used in a racist context. It is used in a derogatory context, and I think that needs to be appreciated and understood. And so if we are using the hashtag as a positive way to reclaim, we need to be very clear and specific on why we're doing it, because it's not in official discourses. So if you are disrupting, for example, if we choose to take back a word in a context where there is overt racism, and the term is used officially, then I can understand us wanting to reclaim that term and use it in an empowered way.
Right.
But here, I don't know if you're missing the point.
I
Not so
understand.
sure. Not so sure.
I understand. Kamal, something you said earlier really resonated with me. You touched on the fact that we don't extend the same respect and consideration to Orang Asli when in our speech, in our thoughts, in our actions, in our policy and decision making. Can I ask you, if we were to zoom out a little bit, and it's a bit of a big question here, but what kind of reckoning do you think Malaysia needs to have with our treatment of Orang Asli and other indigenous communities?
I think the conversation today, and why I agreed to speak actually, is that this is really a good opportunity for us to take stock of how, as a society, we see the Orang Asli, and historically how, as a wider society, we've treated the Orang Asli. So there is a writer named Mahat Akia, or Mahat China, who has written a very an incredible number of books. For he retired as a DJ with RTM, the Orang Asli radio station in RTM, and suddenly he became this prolific writer. And he writes about Perang Sangkin, which is the slave raiding wars that happened about, I think, 150 odd years ago, in different parts of Perak. I would imagine Pahang and Kelantan would have stories of those as well. But he focuses on Perak. And he talks about how a group of our population would slave raid Orang Asli villages. And a lot of it is, of course, he's writing a fiction, but I suspect, and I think we need to ask him, we need to get him on as well one day. I suspect these are from oral traditions. That's the structure, the core content of it is from their oral tradition. But of course, he has brought in romance and other stuff to make it readable. And I think that's the first thing we need to realize. Malaysia does have a dark history of slavery, and Orang Aslis were largely, and this is not just a debt slaves or bonded kind of slavery, right? Which we do recognize in our history books and all. But these are the kind of slaveries that we think happen in other countries, where groups would go in, raid the villagers, kill those who oppose, and kidnap those who are vulnerable and then sell them, right? So slavery is part. And I think as how we want to see the Orang Asli, how we want, in order for to be able to recognize the trauma Orang Asli face, I think it is important that we start by recognizing this at a wider level. So Mahat's book, fiction as it is a good starting point to get a sense into the kind of trauma such an experience produced. But of course, they were not just passive. They were not just passively accepting the violence. They also responded, and so some sort of a truce was made at some point. And of course, now these are just orally transmitted intergenerational. I think that would be the starting point of how we think about the Orang Asli. The other one is, of course, to challenge the colonial perception of Orang Asli as the kind of Rousseauan noble savage. They were living peacefully in nature as nature. And so in many ways, when we talk about Orang Asli in public, we tend to be very condescending and paternalistic, and even the fact that we can refer to Orang Asli as Orang Asli rather than to refer to individuals or, categories based on certain themes. Like I might talk about you, Melisa, as Melisa, or Melisa, the radio, the television, icon, or but I won't say that Malay woman. That would just come out awkward, right? But we do that for Orang Asli. We tend to gloss over, and I think that's a reason we do that. And it is historically, it has a history that, and we need to. It's 2025. We should by now look at it.
We should do better, for sure.
Better.
Yeah, Kamal, thank you so much for sharing some of this. You brought up some excellent points, and I appreciate you for that. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Melisa.
Dr. Kamal Solhaimi Fadzil from UM's Department of Anthropology and Sociology. We're going to take a quick break here and consider this. We'll be back with more. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. Joining me on the line now is Dr Colin Nicholas, who is the founder and coordinator of the Centre for Orang Asli Concerns. Colin, thank you so much for being on the show with me today. The term Sakai has really sparked quite a lot of debate over its use. What do you make of the current debate and how the term has been used and understood today?
Well, the current debate, if you mean the debate coming from the students, Orang Asli students, that's quite interesting because generally, for most Orang Asli, Sakai is a bad term. It's a very derogatory term. But interestingly, last year, the Orang Asli graduates decided to revamp the term, you see. And they were taking the cue from the Black Lives Matters campaign in the US because, the black is a bad term, like niggers and so on. But they were able to turn it around and turn it into a positive, and with all this action, public action. So they thought that similarly, Sakai is a bad term, derogatory term, and they can also re-engineer it to make it look like something that they should be proud of. So that's why they had this Proud Sakai campaign.
And what's your view of that? Do you see it as a way of reclaiming the identity, asserting their right to define their own identity? And I'm just wondering whether you think it's even possible for a slur to be, I guess, reclaimed or succeeded in shifting its social meaning?
The word is a neutral word. How it's used, it makes it, how it's used, the context it's used, makes it very derogatory or not. Just like Jakun and Orang Ulu. These are terms, when some people use it, it's a derogatory term. But if you are an Orang Ulu, if you are a Jakun person, you say, no, I'm a Jakun, I'm not Chinese, I'm not Malay, I'm a Jakun, I'm an Orang Ulu. So it's how you use it. It's just like the word Keling, It came from the word Kalinga, which meant, again, friend and comrade and so on. But over time, it became derogatory. Just like asking, you're a Western-minded person, you're an American-minded person. No? So the context is very important. Unfortunately, in Malaysia today, as far as the Orang Asli are concerned, the context is that the word Sakai has very, very negative and derogatory and it looks down on the Orang Asli as slaves, people who are backward, without religion, dirty, and all the negative things you can. And the Orang Asli generally do not like that term. So we have to respect it. Not ban it, but respect that wish to not to be called that.
Okay. What do you then make of the implications if we stop using this term? Could there be any implications in terms of customary land rights or even cultural implications as well, as some have argued, including the Orang Asli student movement?
Yes, so I think there's actually no legal implications. If you're referring to, in the past, there were such things as Sakai reserves. So now if the word Sakai is banned or not used, then the Orang Asli do not have rights to that. That's a very weak argument because there is this interpretation act that all the terms that were used before apply, Like in the past, in the Orang Asli Act, the person in charge of the department was a commissioner of Orang Asli, but now he's called the Director General. It's just a change of name. But the legal implication is not so much as that, because if you were a Bugis before you were a Chinese and so on, it doesn't mean that you are now a Malay, you were never a Bugis, you see. It's again how society uses the term. Legally, there's no implication at all if you do not use the word Sakai or stop using the word Sakai. Or you shouldn't be banning the word Sakai. It's part of our history and context, I think.
Okay. But do you think it should be considered hate speech if it's causing offense to some groups, some communities? Do you think we should label it and punish it as hate speech?
If it's used in the context of a hateful manner, yes, it is hate speech, no? But when I give talks to people, and I say in the past they were called Sakais, and the reason why they're called Orang Asli today because they didn't like the word Sakai. There's nothing wrong in using the word Sakai. It's how you use it, in what context, and what purpose and intention you have that counts.
Okay. Well, I want to zoom our conversation out a little bit and talk a little bit about the way Malaysia approaches Orang Asli in policy making. So we have the Aboriginal Peoples Act that the government is now proposing to amend, and they're said to be inspired by New Zealand's approach to empowering the Maori. Can I ask you what your thoughts on this are, Colin? Do you think that this act needs updating, needs to be amended in today's current context?
There needs to be a law to guarantee and secure Orang Asli rights, and two kinds of rights: rights to the customary lands and rights to the socioeconomic condition. You cannot put all into one act. And so yes, definitely there is a need to not just amend the act, but look into coming up with a special act specifically for Orang Asli land, like how we have Malay Reservations Act, and then we also have religious acts, acts on religion and customs and language and so on. Same thing for the Orang Asli. But if you want to emulate, if our Deputy Prime Minister has gone to New Zealand and he says he wants to emulate the Maoris, all the better.
Because why all the better? I mean, what aspects of the way other countries treat their indigenous peoples can we learn from? Because I'm just wondering whether we should be taking whether the context is the same. Can we apply it here?
We can apply it here if we have the political will, instead of just the PR message is coming through the papers. Because in New Zealand, Aotearoa, the Maori people, their rights are enshrined in the constitution to some extent. The rights to land, the rights to identity, and so on, because of the Waitangi Treaty. So you have secured rights of the indigenous peoples in the constitution, recognized rights. In Malaysia, the Orang Asli are not even mentioned in the constitution as people with special position. So we got a long way to go. So if the Deputy Prime Minister wants to emulate the Maoris, the New Zealand example, by all means, is 1,000 times better. The very fact, I'm quoting him, he himself said, we need to amend the act because the Orang Asli have been left behind. That is a very clear statement from the Deputy Prime Minister himself, saying that the Orang Asli had been marginalized by the own Malaysian government. That's why we need the amendments. But the problem is, we do not know what they're trying to amend or how they're going about doing the amendments. They have some stakeholder meetings of people who are not very well informed. They're passing around Google Forms to have surveys and so on. So there's no concrete, nobody has seen some concrete drafts of whatever the amendments are supposed to be. So how can you have a full stakeholder consultation, prior informed consent, and all those principles which must come into being? We're talking about stakeholders and rights holders involved.
Right. So how should they go about doing it? What is it that you would like to see to make sure that they're actually engaging correctly and meaningfully all stakeholders?
Well, first of all, the people who are doing the report into the amendments should be well versed into what has been happening, and not just the law, but Orang Asli situation and what Orang Asli want. You cannot just talk to a few representatives, for example, the Patins or JKK members, and assume that that's what they want. And you do it in a very short one-day workshop, half-a-day workshop, these kind of things. You just cannot. There's a lot of work involved. You don't change the constitution or you don't change an amendment act just by doing a report, a consultancy report. None of that has been done in our country. And those which have followed that process always has been shot down for being lacking in this and that and so on. So the first thing you want to do is, if you have a draft, before you present it to Parliament, before you present it to the department, present it to the Orang Asli first and others who are interested so that they can comment on it.
Colin, can I ask you, have you had any engagement with in this respect with the government?
I was invited to a stakeholder meeting sometime back, but the invitation came in while I was traveling on my way to Sabah. The meeting was in the afternoon. So I sent my colleague and they were there for 1 hour only.
Wow. Okay, so then we will probably do a follow-up when we have more details. But before we get to that point, what is it that you want the powers that be, or those who are drafting this amendment or hopefully new legislation that will help empower Orang Asli communities, what is it that you want to see from this?
A few fundamental things. The first thing is what the DPM has said, that the Orang Asli be recognized as the first peoples of this country and that they have rights to their customary lands. The second thing is that you cannot put everything into one act. As I said, you should have at least 2 acts, one specifically on Orang Asli land, and there's a lot of issues to be dealt with, in terms of who should be the land administrator and what kind of. Orang Asli are not homogeneous. There are some who are living in the forest, huge territories. There are some who are living near towns where lands all demarcated and so on. And some who are having rubber trees, rubber plantations, and oil palm. So it's very varied. You cannot have one kind of a rule that fits everybody. You see. So that part. The second part is JAQA, the Orang Asli department. You see, they should be. The law should tell them that your role is as a service agency to provide services, not to represent the Orang Asli, not to control the Orang Asli. So education, health, and all the infrastructure, that's your job. But you cannot represent Orang Asli at government meetings on a project or whatever, or just depend on the headman and so on. So the two very important principles in the UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on Rights of Indigenous Peoples, two very important principles which Orang Asli, all Indigenous peoples all over the world want is the right to free, prior and informed consent, and the right to self-determination, the right to determine for themselves what's best for them, not to be dictated to from outside or above.
Yeah. Colin, thank you so much for sharing some of these insights with us. I really appreciate your time. Dr. Colin Nicholas there from the Centre for Orang Asli Concerns, wrapping up this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.